Hello, everybody. I hope you are doing well today. I am here to talk about a recent read that I finished. I wanted to talk about it now because I actually have to return it to the library and also the next read that I'm starting. So we just finished. Oh, there's like truck noises outside. Reign of the Empire, The Mask of Fear by Alexander Reed. Alexander Freed, sorry, his name is blocked. So this was a great book. It was a hefty book, but it was worth the read. At first, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna actually finish this, but I did. Look at that. I love this. It says, before the rebellion, the empire reigned. I thought I said ruled. But it is so good. Okay, so this book follows Mon Mothma. She's on the cover here. Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Saw Gerrera. Now, I don't like Saw Gerrera. Y'all know I have not forgiven Saw Gerrera since the Bad Batch situation. Okay, I never liked his character anyway because he's an extremely reckless character. He's very violent. He's more of a terrorist than he is like part of the rebellion, in my personal opinion. Okay. And again, he got Tech killed in the Bad Batch. Therefore, I don't like him and never will. And I stand by that. He ruined the Bad Batch's family in my eyes. So I don't like the guy. But I was willing to give this a shot. And luckily for me, it really doesn't follow Saw so much as this other character named Sujan Vac Nalis. So that was exciting. So this book starts directly after the Empire takes control. So it becomes from the Republic to the Empire. Okay. The Jedi have been massacred and are continuing to be hunted. The Empire is taking power. Stuff is on the move. All right. And so it follows, it's very political because two of the main characters are political. They're senators, right? And so I thought maybe it would be a lot, but I like Star Wars political drama because like it feels close to home in a way because all politics is pretty much the same. Well, I mean, it mirrors a lot, let's just say, it mirrors a lot of home, which is like, a little bit like, ugh, but also it's just so interesting and it's Star Wars and it's a franchise I love, so I can't complain. Um, but I think my favorite chapters were Bail Organa's chapters and Sujin Vaknalis's chapters. Mon Mothma was interesting, but her chapters often felt a little bit slower. And honestly, like Mon Mothma was not the most likable character, and that's fine, by the way, totally fine. I don't mind that she was willing to compromise her values to kind of restrict the emperor, because like I understand where she's coming from in that she's trying to do everything possible and get alliances everywhere in order to make sure that the emperor doesn't have absolute control of the galactic empire, the galactic senate, all this stuff. She wants democracy to still exist. But she's really interesting. I really like seeing into her personal life more. Like she's married, she has a husband named Perrin, and they're kind of like in a loveless marriage, but they still really care about each other, and like that was interesting. And like, again, the way that she was going after the separatists, hearing her, her conversations, like the ex-separatists, obviously the Confederacy is gone, but now they're trying to reintegrate the separatist worlds into the Senate, and she's trying to get their votes, and like that stuff was really interesting. So really like that. But Bail Organa, the one man, he had a mission, dude. His mission was to exonerate the Jedi for any wrongdoing. That was his main goal in this book. And I really love that because obviously he was friends with a lot of the Jedi. He was good friends with Padme, and obviously he has Leia now at this point. Um, and so he really wants to exonerate the Jedi and prove that the Emperor is a sick dude who killed people for no reason. Okay, and and murdered children and so forth, right? Like it's bad. And there was so much Jedi propaganda going out, and he was trying to figure out how were they making this propaganda look so real, because it looked real. It had Jedi seals on it and all that stuff. So he was like, I gotta find out who's doing this. And so this eventually leads him to collide with Saw Gerrera's crew, and Sujin ends up being in that crew as well. Now, Sujin, such an interesting character. Um, he was a separatist bioweapon, and he was asleep essentially in like this cryostasis or whatever and was supposed to be awoken if something happened and the war ended not in favor of the separatists, which did happen. And he was essentially supposed to be an assassin that took care of business and caused a lot of havoc and trouble in case of emergency. But he instead gets woken up by Saw Gerrera's crew, and he's like, but he ends up going with them because he's like, well, I got to get somewhere, so we're gonna get somewhere. But he's very violent minded, obviously, so like he's not the most likable character either. But when you find out his background and where he came from and how he became a separatist bioweapon, oh snap. Okay. Um, so essentially, where Sujin is part of a small clan that he says were cursed. Something happened to their genetics, and they weren't able to reproduce anymore. So his people were literally dying out. They had asked the Republic for help, and the Republic basically brushed them off. They tried, and later on you find out that Bail Organa was actually one of the ones who was fighting for the protection of the Alvajorian people. I don't know. His is the Nahasta clan, so I'm going to say the Nahasta clan because it's easier to say. But he fought strongly for those people. But everybody else basically was like, we got bigger problems than this clan of people that are dying out, like whatever. So the separatists went to them and they said, hey, went to the Nahasta clan and a few of the other clans as well, and said, hey, if you join us, we'll help you with your genetic problem, and we'll heal your genetics, or we'll fix this curse, and your people will thrive again. And I guess whatever was causing this genetic problem that prevented reproduction was a fixable thing, but the Republic looked away from the problem. And so that's why Sujin hates the Republic, because they didn't want to do anything for them, but the Separatists did. Now, mind you, they did also make him a bioweapon, which he did agree to, but it's kind of sad because, like, he felt like he had no other choice, you know. But he kind of, as he eventually, because he runs into Bail Organa, because they meet on this really also, I don't know how to pronounce any of these things, okay? But they Sujin knows of a cache, a separatist cache, and they're trying to get to it. And it's on this old historic planet that looks a lot like Coruscant if Coruscant it had completely died off like thousands of years ago. And so it's like a shell, like there's old ancient skyscrapers, and like it's like a whole civilization just disappeared in an instant. It's like sounds so cool from the descriptions. It's called Ao Digerits, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it, okay? But it's really cool. And so that's where he was actually hidden and where his cache of stuff was hidden. So Saw Gerrera and co go there, and Saw is just using Sujin. Like Saw is, whatever. But Sujin actually befriends some of the other gorillas, and whatever. Befriends. I mean, he's pretty quick to cut ties when times comes. But Bail Organa goes there because he's looking for a way to exonerate the Jedi. He learns about this cache, and he thinks that the Separatists probably have databanks there that have hidden information. So he goes there. And unfortunately, the gorillas got there first. Sujin gets there, and he actually scomps his way into the databanks and gets all the information. And he does find, because he's trying to find out his directive. He's trying to find out also who the other separatist traitors are, because he's angry at separatists rejoining the empire now. And he just sees them as traitors and he wants to kill them. He's a very singular minded dude. But he does find out information about the Jedi, or so he claims. I feel like he could have been lying. Like, he does show Bail Organa like a seal that the Separatists had made that looked legit from the like a Jedi seal. But I'm like, what if he was like not really? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But it doesn't really matter because it doesn't end well. But yeah, so Bail Organa and Sujin end up becoming kind of allies briefly. There's a huge explosion in the city which takes down most of the city, and it's a historic site, so people are mad about that. But he ends up escaping with Sujin, and he kind of concocts this plan that if we bring this information that you have before the Senate, then they will realize that the Jedi weren't evil, they didn't try to assassinate the Emperor without cause, and that the Emperor is a dictator that is a problem. And Sujin agrees to this because he has his own kind of motivation to go to Coruscant. He wants to not necessarily go before the Senate. He doesn't actually believe Bale's plan is going to work, but he wants to get close to the separatists in order to eliminate them, if you will. But of course, things don't go well. We know how the story ends. We know that anything that they plan to do isn't going to be good. So there's that. And during this whole time, Mon Mothma is also instituting a bill. She's creating a bill that is supposed to stop the Emperor gaining complete control over the Senate and the Empire. She's writing up the notes and whatnot, and she's got some interpersonal things that are happening. She's also being interrogated quite often for her questionable loyalties, because obviously she's not loyal to the Emperor. Okay, she's loyal to democracy. um so all of that is going on while Bale and Sujin are doing this, and Saw Gerrera kind of drops off after Sujin leaves, until the end. He comes back at the end, but essentially, he's just doing his terrorist tendencies, okay? He's just out here causing people problems. Um, but Sujin gets there, and Bail Organa also gets there. But what happens is that they get surrounded as soon as they land in Coruscant, and Sujin says, okay, I have to pretend like you're my hostage, or they're going to think you're with me and you're going to go to jail, and none of this is going to matter. So he does. So Bail Organa can't meet up with Sujin, and Sujin runs, and he's hiding in the bowels of Coruscant. um, and so they have to find him, and so he recruits Mon Mothma. Since he can't have eyes on him being associated with Sujin after being seen as his hostage, Mon Mothma takes over, and she finds out how to get to him. One of the ex-separatist senators manages to contact him, and they set up a meetup. So she meets up with him, but not before she gets a message from that ex-separatist senator that tells her how to detonate Sujin, because he is a bioweapon, and he has a self-destruct inside of him, but the creators who made him also made a way to self-destruct him without his consent. Ugh, it's kind of tough. But so she's like, I hope I don't have to do that, but hey, because she's very pacifist. She's supposed to be extremely pacifist, and she is generally, but things are crazy. So anyway, she meets up with Sujin, and she tries to convince him, what is best. They need to go forward with this thing with the Senate and going in front. She brings Bale's plan up to him again, and he agrees to it. They hop into his speeder, and then she realizes that he says actually he kind of gives up on Bail Organa's plan, and he's like, you know what? None of what y'all are doing is gonna work. I'm just gonna assassinate the Emperor. And she's like, no, 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 no. This is not part of the plan. She's like, that would be a terrible idea, because all it would mean is somebody else is going to step into his position who's just as bad as him. And now all of the separatists can forget, the separatist worlds can forget reintegration. You're going to start another war. Like, no. And he's like, yeah, well, does he have a successor yet? And she's like, well, no, he doesn't have one yet. And he's like, fine, I'm going to go do it. And she's like, okay, okay. And so then she primes him with the first word, and then there's a second word that she has to say. But she primes him with the first word, and he knows it. He knows that she did. He can feel it in his body that she did, but he doesn't say anything. And they continue to have a conversation. And, she talks about how Bail Organa really fought for his people, which Bail Organa didn't tell him. And he finds it really interesting that Bail Organa didn't tell him that. And he honestly respects it, because he thinks, well, okay, he wasn't trying to get on my good side. He admitted to the wrongs that the Republic did towards his people. And, you know, and he kept that responsibility instead of trying to pawn it off like, well, I tried to help your people. So he respected that. And Bail Organa did try to help Sujin as well, even offering to help him have the bioweapons removed from his body and make him a normal person again, but he disagreed. He doesn't want to do that, obviously. He wants to go kill people. So they get to this place. Mon Mothma's dropped off, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead, and I'm gonna go kill the Emperor. And she just panics, and she knows she can't lose sight of him. So he's going off on this speeder, and she just starts saying the code word, which is sublime. And of course, he explodes, and he dies right then and there. And Bail Organa is, of course, devastated when he hears the news about this. And first of all, I think he's just sad that Sujin had to die like this, but also there goes all the exonerating information of the Jedi. Who knows if it would have done anything? Most likely not, because of how the Emperor had control. But regardless, the interesting thing is the Imperial Rebirth Act, which Mon Mothma had, made up, her bill, did pass. It passed. And so everyone's excited because, oh, the Emperor is not going to have absolute control. This is great. Everything is going to be fine. But then Mon Mothma gets taken on another little joyride with Mas Ameda, which is the Grand Vizier of the Senate and the Emperor's right-hand man, right? And he's like, so we're going to make amends to your bill, and all of that's vetoed. All of that stuff about the Emperor not having complete control, vetoed. And she's like, you can't veto a bill. It's already been passed. And he's like, well, actually, I don't think you realize the situation you're in, which is that the Emperor is in complete control. I don't think you realize that situation. And then he brings her to like a prison camp where people get no, I guess it's not. People get re-educated and to fit in with the imperial world if they don't, fit in. And, he's basically like, listen, this could be you, you know what I mean? And she's already been in jail and she doesn't want to be arrested again. And so she realizes the extent of their situation, that it's already too late. The Empire has already taken basically complete control. And so it ends with Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera, and Mon Mothma coming together to try to figure out what to do about the situation. But they're all so different in how they want to tackle things that it's kind of like a bust. The rebellion doesn't come out of this at this time, but they're all thinking about it, right? But at this point, Bail wants to go home and be with his wife and kid. Mon Mothma wants to go back to being just her life and trying to be as good a senator as she can be, and Saw Gerrera wants to go be a terrorist. So, yeah, that's good. But there were some great lines at the end that had me like, one of them during that conversation. Uh, during the conversation that the three of them were having was really, I love this line. Bail, I'm trying to see if I should read the whole thing. No, I'm just going to read this line because I love it. But Bail Organa says because Mon Mothma is trying to make compromises in order to get kind of what she wants to happen in the bill in the Senate, right? And he says, you can't fight evil with compromise. Oh, my goodness. Mon Mothma does follow up with, perhaps not, but you can't build anything lasting without it. However, I disagree. I think Bail Organa is absolutely correct, and so does he. She says she doesn't try to convince them because they're in their own. I'm with Bail Organa on this. You cannot compromise with evil. And I know as a senator, she's actually trying to because she's making compromises with the other, like the separatist groups, and what do you guys want to see? What do you guys want to see in this bill and stuff like that? So she's trying in order to get their votes. She's trying to do that, but he's so right. You can't compromise with evil. I just love that. And then there was another line. Let me see. In his chapter, when he was talking about the Jedi, he says, Bail loved the Jedi. If he was haunted by them, it was because he cried out to their ghosts, because he strived to emulate their clarity and endurance, their faith that one brave soul, guided by the Force, could set the galaxy right. It was the wish of a child carried with him since childhood. And I love that because it's so true. It really does take one person doing something brave to really change everything. And it's not to say that, you know, you don't need a little extra help, but I love how he talks about the Jedi and how he really was the one standing for them not to be forgotten as villains of the galaxy that just tried to kill the Emperor. And it was just so interesting seeing also the different viewpoints of the other senators when Mon Mothma is trying to work with them, and how they're he stopped the war. The people are happy. Why would you want to start another war? You can see how people saw Emperor Palpatine as a net positive, that he had stopped a war. He was likable. He was trying to make a galactic peace, and all this. But the people weren't seeing the stuff that Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and even Saw Gerrera were privy to, which is that the peace comes at the cost of freedom. If you are out of line, you're going to go and be re-educated. If you don't fit in, you're going to go and be in jail forever, or you're going to get killed. Or, and if you have any association with the Jedi, you better just forget it. You know what I mean? If you are a Jedi, you better just forget it. So it's like, there's so many moving pieces in this story, and it was so good. I didn't think I would enjoy a political Star Wars drama this much, but I really, really enjoyed it. I really loved the characterizations for each character because they felt like themselves. I was glad there was not too much Saw Gerrera because I think I would have literally smashed my head through a wall. I could not read a book that was just focused on him. And even like Sujin, who had very violent tendencies, very violent thoughts, and like very pro separatist, you could still understand his viewpoint, and he was humanized in his suffering and in what he had endured and what his people had endured, and how he had come from a beautiful cultural environment that had been destroyed by war. And so you could understand where he came from, even if you didn't agree with the way he was acting. And so, yeah, I mean, even Saw, they did give him a good background and things like that. And it was interesting. I'm not saying that it wasn't interesting. I just say that I already have a bias against the guy, so it can't be helped. But, yeah, I really love this. Bail Organa, love that guy. R.I.P. obviously got blown up on Alderaan, but like, it was really good. It was really good. Some of the chapters felt a little repetitive in what they were doing, but it's just because they're senators and what they were doing is the same thing, trying to get votes and whatnot and whatever. But overall, it was good. It was a clean book. It was a clean read. It was really heavy on politics. So if you're not into that, then I wouldn't get into it. There's not a whole lot of action except for like the middle part where they're traveling, in that ancient planet. I did also love that Bail Organa brought up a lot about clones being people and that you shouldn't just want to kill them. Also interesting how Sujin brought that up as a negative about the Republic making an army of clones that were essentially children being forced to fight because they're made so quickly, right? And they're basically sent out to fight right away. And he's like, yeah, we sent battle droids, but you sent children. Like, I love the arguments in here because nothing there are black and white things in this world, but when it comes to war, a lot of times there are those gray areas where you're like, oh my gosh, wait, maybe, my side also did bad things. You know what I mean? And, or what I believed in also did bad things. Because guess what? People suck, okay? And that's just a fact. And what people do to win wars also really sucks, even if it's like a necessary evil. And I love that despite those things, right? Because Sujin, I think, eventually asked Bail Organa if, after hearing all this and hearing his point of view, do you still agree with the Republic? Would you still side with the Republic? And he said yes. And he said, I know that maybe our side didn't do good all the time. In fact, I know it didn't, but they stood for what I believed in, and I still believe in it. And even when he talked about the Jedi, like Sujin had heard, he'd never met a Jedi before, but he'd heard that they were ambassadors of peace, and he had hoped that upon seeing one on the battlefield it would be a good thing. But the first time he saw a Jedi, they were cutting down people and cutting down his people and even killing his friends. And so he had a really negative view of the Jedi, and he's like, how can you call them ambassadors of peace? And Bail Organa was able to talk to them, explain about them more, and also point out himself in saying that, well, you were a weapon too, and you're just a person, but you were a weapon, and the Jedi were like our version of what you are, and in fact, the bioweapons, Sujin included, were created in response to the Jedi, so that's what they were intended for. Anyway, fantastic. I would, if you like Star Wars, please pick up Reign of the Empire, The Mask of Fear. This is fantastic. I hope there's going to be more books in this series. I don't know if this is a series, it might be a standalone. But if there's more books that he writes, I would be absolutely willing to read them. I know he does have other Star Wars books, so I will probably check them out. This was great. This was great. Highly recommend. I will not keep yapping. I will not. But I do have another library book that I have to read quickly now because that one took me so long to finish. But it is Marie Lu's Sky Hunter. And I thought this was a standalone, but I guess it's a duology. I want a standalone. It's fine. I have so much to read. But this is the only other library book I have. I'm actually really excited about it. It sounds really interesting. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic situation, also space, which is fun. We were going from space to space, and she's kind of like the girl Mara. It seems to be like the last of her kind, and she's trying to protect her people. She becomes a sky hunter for that or striker for that reason. And so it should be fun. I've never read anything by Marie Lu. I know she has a lot of books that people like very, very much. So I'm looking forward to checking out her work. This was like, for some reason, Marie Lu was a a highlighted author at my library when I went in, so all of her books were on display, and this was the one that spoke to me. I know she also wrote the very popular, is it Legacy? Legend. That's it. But also she had a lot of other books that I didn't know she had, this being one of them, so I was excited to check that out. So I don't have, I like the, look at that, that's cool too. I've not even started this yet because I literally just finished Reign of the Empire, but I am looking forward to starting this very, very soon. I have, I think, until the 28th to finish it, so I don't have too long. Yep, I have until the 28th to finish it. So we're going to try to rush through it, but it seems like it doesn't have as many pages. Oh, it's still like 400, nope, 371. This was like 463, so it's like 100 pages less, but it's still a big book, bro. Why do I pick up books that are this big? And I still have Snow Globe. But I prioritize library books because they have to go back so much sooner. So we're gonna get through those, you know what I'm saying? But either way, what an amazing read. Definitely check out Alexander Freed's Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear, and I will let you know how Sky Hunter goes. I think it'll be fun. I think it's gonna be fun. More space stuff. We're getting spacey. So yeah, I guess we'll leave it there. So just remember that I love you and Jesus loves you more, and I hope you have a great day. Bye guys!